Hi, I'm Stunning Stella Cheeks.
And I'm the Enigma Erin Klein.
And this is
Not Your Demographic.
We used to be a feminist wrestling podcast.
Shockingly, we'd rather talk about literally anything else now.
Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Erin is eating and drinking up top.
I know.
I've tried to start this like 3 times, and this bitch just keeps putting something in her mouth.
Listen, I can't help it. How are you? Obviously not as hungry as I am.
No, I'm okay. I'm good. I don't know. I'm fine. I've been working a lot, per usual.
The Stella Cheeks way.
I like do these bursts of working so much, but then I still have so much stuff to do, and then I feel like I'm like failing because I haven't, posted an episode that I said that I would post to the Patreon. But I'm like, well, I gotta fix it. But I also just worked like 72 hours in a row, but I have all this other stuff, so it's just like a massive like boil of anxiety over here. Per usual.
For you.
The nice thing is like most of my jobs, not most of my jobs, but a lot of, at least one of my jobs, I can like listen to audiobooks while I'm doing it. So I've been like flying through fucking audiobooks. Like when we get to the book section, you're gonna be like, shut up, stop talking. You're talking too much, because I read a lot. And by read I mean listened. But whatever.
I mean, it counts.
It does
It's
count.
all the same.
We know. That's the NYD way.
Yeah. All reading is reading. You can read literally anything.
You can
One
read
of the
with
books
your
on my-
ears.
You can read with your ears. That's absolutely right. You can read with your fingers if you're blind. That's fine.
Yeah, reading is cool.
Reading is super cool.
How are you?
I'm okay. I've been, fine.
I like that. Why do we even do how are yous? Because we're just like, yeah, I don't know, alive.
Well, part of it is like we just see each other all the time right now because
true.
we're also recording Extremity, so it's like, cool. I've seen you like 4 times in
I
the
saw you
last
on
week.
Sunday and on Tuesday.
And now
I'm
I'm
gonna
seeing you over
tomorrow.
the internet Saturday, and we'll see you tomorrow. Yeah.
Yeah, we're really in each other's pockets.
I know. It's cool. We'll get a break soon.
Do you need a break? How rude.
No.
Oh, I'm just looking for
just
that
have-
Stella Cheeks break. Well, I'm glad you're not sick of me.
No. Whatever. We used to do this in person once a week for like 5 years.
A nightmare, truly. But to be fair, we did get sick of each other.
That's true. That's true. Like, I need a break.
What have you been reading?
I have not read as much as you have. I only finished a couple of books. I finished, which you talked about on the last one.
Oh,
so
it's
I'm sure,
so good.
Yeah, I'm sure people noticed we took an extra week off. Part of that is because our season 2 of Extremity is coming back next week.
Next Friday.
I can't believe it's coming
This
already.
Friday, actually, when this drops.
Oh, shit. This Friday. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's so weird.
Season
Oh,
2.
Season 2 of Extracts, it's coming on Labor Day Friday, the Friday of Labor Day, I guess is the way to say that. But we wanted to align because we'll be going back to, we are every other week already, but we wanted to align where you'll get us every week if you want to listen to both of our shows.
Ooh.
So, our, content. So that's part of why we took an extra week to put this episode out. But I still only finished reading 3 books, but you talked about this last time. I finished A Certain Hunger by Chelsea G. Summers. It was so fucking good.
So fucking good.
Man, Henry nailed it. He was like, you guys will like this book. And he was right. I fucking love this book. It was by far one of the best books I've read all year.
I keep thinking about it,
just
too.
So good. Yes, I agree.
There are certain scenes and things that happen in it, and I'm like, I think this might be one of the best books I've ever read. I love this book so much.
So good. It was so good. And like, I really liked, I told you this too, I'm going to try not to spoil things because I really think people should read this book. It was really fucking good.
Because you're like, casual cannibalism. And then there's some things that happen and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the like blasé way she talks about it, you're like, oh yeah, so this woman's an actual
psychopath. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Like I really enjoyed. Okay. So she presents it as, I'm writing this memoir. From prison. She says that right up top. It's like literally the first thing that she talks about. And I like that she's like, I'm just going to tell you how it is. And here's all this shit that they didn't know about in my trial. I'm going to confess to like 5 extra murders, basically. And it's like, the further you get in, you're like, oh my God, like, I didn't realize you were being this upfront. But then you get closer to the end and there's one specific thing that I don't want to spoil that she just casually throws out. And I was like, oh, you're an unreliable narrator in a way that is very clever. And I really liked that because it's true also of like food writing where like those people are also unreliable narrators. And she talks about that idea inside the book too of going from a food critic who has to stay hidden and a food like blogger basically who is known and like part of her interaction.
There's like
with
a brand.
Yeah, exactly. And so like part of that is having to like interact in a way where you don't hurt your brand. And so you don't want to like shit all over people because then you lose access to stuff. And so that in some ways also makes you an unreliable narrator. I just thought it was fucking brilliantly written. There's just so much
and
of it.
And it's also weirdly about female friendship.
Yes, it was. I was like, I loved that because you told me that, and if I hadn't known that, I never would have seen that coming. Like, there's
sorry,
and I'm glad,
I guess.
But I liked it. I'm glad that I knew that because her friend Emma, I think is her name.
Yeah, because Dorothy is the main woman,
yeah,
and then I think it's Emma.
Her friend changes her name like 4 different times, and I think she ends up as Emma. And if I hadn't understood at the beginning going into it that it was gonna be about female friendship in that way, I don't know that I would have paid as close of attention to the stuff that she talks about, especially at the beginning with Emma and the way she like refers to her and talks about their friendship. So I was glad that I had that information to know like, oh, this isn't just like throwaway information, like this is stuff that's going to become very important later. So I'm glad that I had that kind of heads up. So I just fucking loved it. It was so fucking good. She talks about the people that she killed. One of them is named Marco. I'm not going to say anything else about how Marco died, except for the fact that I read it before bed and was like, this is legitimately terrifying. Like, I was not anticipating how, like, it's like you said, she's so blasé about some of them. And, like, by then, you've already learned about several people that she's killed in, like, pretty horrific ways. Yeah. Then you get to Marco and you're like, holy shit. And there's some stuff at the end too. Again, I don't want to like really spoil this, but she talks about experiencing love at one point, and I love that she's like, I'm not myself when I'm in love with someone, and I don't like that, and I want to be my true psychopath self. Yeah. And like, I loved that. I thought it was such a really clever way to talk about the way that love changes you and can make you a better person. But because this narrator is an actual psychopath, she's like, I don't want to do that. I loved this person and I was happy with them, but I would much rather be this fucking insane psychopath. Like, I just loved it. I thought it was so good. So thank you again, Henry. Like, this was such a fucking good recommendation.
Yeah.
I've recommended it to so many people. It's hard though, because it's like, okay, I really think you should read this book because it's really good, but hard trigger warning. There's some fucked up cannibalism in this book. It's just so good. And like the way she talks about how she gets into cannibalism, I was just like, that it was not what I was expecting. Not at all what I was expecting. God, it was just so fucking good.
So good.
It was so good.
And it's crazy that it's this woman's first novel. Like, she's a writer, so like you can tell she's like a writer, but like,
yeah,
it's crazy that this is her first novel because it's incredible.
Yes, absolutely. And I like, too, we talked about this right after I finished it in person, because we see each other all the time, that you said when we recorded last time that it was a little hard for you to get into the writing style because it's written in a very particular, and which is like a voice that she chooses and uses on purpose because that's her writing style. But I also really liked that as you get to the end, she starts to lose that voice a little and it becomes much more memoir-y. And I just thought that was a very brilliant choice by the author about the way that she was using her voice.
Yeah, because Dorothy only knows how to write as a food critic in like a very certain way. But as she gets more personal and reveals more personal things like how she murders all of her lovers, she gets a lot more like personable.
Yeah, I just found it very interesting, and I like didn't even realize that shift in tone was happening until like basically the end of the book, and I was like, God, this was so smart. It was just such smart writing. You can tell it took Chelsea J. Summers 10 years to write this book. Like,
it's meticulous.
Yes, it's meticulous. There's so much research that goes into it. Like, you said you wound up looking a bunch of stuff up. I also found out I wound up looking a bunch of stuff up.
Stuff being like big words that I didn't understand.
Well, but also different types of food that I just like wasn't familiar with, that I was like, this is clearly important and I should have some kind of understanding of what this is. And I also really liked, this was clearly a choice that she made, that there were a couple of words that were like big $3 words that she reused a bunch of times, because that's also very true to food writing, because like you are assuming people aren't going to sit down and read all of your writing like a book, because they're reading sections of it, because you're like you're publishing like articles. And so there were certain words like, contemptible. It means food, basically. It's a long word that starts with a C that she used over and over again. And by the end of the book, I was like, oh, this is a choice you're making. You're reusing this same word. And she also used the word, it was a synonym for fertile. And she used it like fecundary? I don't remember.
I don't know.
These are words I only ever read and I don't ever say out loud, much like the author probably. And so I thought it was a really interesting choice that she was reusing those same words over and over, because it's clearly something that happens inside of that writing too. I just thought it was very clever.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm so glad you read it, or you read it. I was like, you have to bump this up your list. It's so good.
Yeah, it was really fucking good. I'm really, really glad that I prioritized it. So I don't normally talk about books that I haven't finished, but I officially DNF'd a book, which I do not like.
We need like a DNF noise, like a sound effect.
Yeah.
Like,
like the Price is Right falling trombone noise.
Slide whistle.
So I got this book. It was super highly recommended. It's one of those books that people are like raving about, and part of it is because it's a debut novel. I fucking hated it. It's called Dead Souls by Sam Riviere. It's okay. So the concept of the book is it's about a scandal in the literary world where a poet basically plagiarizes all of the work that he publishes. But the idea behind it is he's like, well, what is plagiarism? And are we not all kind of plagiarizing everything inside of this? And they're at like a big cultural festival, and the author or the narrator works in publishing and like hears this scandal and then runs into this guy at this festival. Right up my alley. Super up my alley. Something that I was like, this is absolutely something I'll be into. There are no paragraph breaks for the entire book.
Gross.
The entire thing is one very long stream of consciousness that just never ends. I think literally only 12 pages into it and was like, I'm going to throw this book into a fire. I understand the concept of it, because the idea is that the narrator is very unreliable and is very selfish. And it's like, are you actually experiencing this, or is this just like a fantasy in your own head? I just hated the execution so fucking much. Because I've talked about this before. I don't like it when authors do that. I don't like it when they're like, I'm going to run this paragraph on for like 4, 5, 6 pages. It's just not a pleasant reading experience. And like, maybe if I had listened to this instead of trying to read it, I would have enjoyed it more, because I could have like found natural places to pause it. But there are no natural places to put it down. And so every time I stopped reading, everything flew out of my head.
Yeah.
And so it was like, I couldn't keep myself inside of the story, and didn't want to, and it's 295 pages. So it's not like, oh, this is like a novella where like 90 pages, I could sit down and I could like really push myself through this. It was like, I don't want to spend a whole day reading this. Like, first of all, don't have the time. Second of all, don't have the interest. And also I didn't like his writing style enough to really push myself through it. So this is the first time I've DNF'd a book in like literal years. It's been a really long time since I was like, nah, I just cannot finish this. So I tried so hard too. I was like, I never ever DNF stuff anymore. I'm not going to do this. I finished that fucking terrible lesbian Victorian book. I'm going to finish. No, I can't do it. It's like, I just cannot. So I did not finish that. but it spent too much time trying to read it, even though I was only like 12 pages into it. I just finished the other day The Plot by Jean Hanff Korelitz. Korelitz. By Jean Hanff Korelitz. She wrote the book that, it has a different title, but was adapted into the Showtime series The Undoing with Nicole Kidman and Hugh Grant.
Oh, okay.
Which I've heard is pretty good. The series itself, I haven't heard a whole bunch about the book itself. I didn't even know it was based off of a book, to be honest. She's written a bunch of stuff. This is the first book of hers that I've read. I'm so torn about it. I enjoyed it. There were things about it that I really liked. I thought that her writing style is good. She's clearly a very good writer. But the plot is about a writer who works at a MFA program, like a third-rate MFA program is how it's described a bunch. And he's a one-hit wonder author. He has a very successful debut novel. And then his second novel is I think he said it sold 80 copies. So it's a huge flop. And so then he goes into this writing program and is like, well, I guess I'll be a teacher because I don't really know what else to do while I try and write this other third book that he just never gets off the ground. And he gets this student who is a huge piece of shit and is like, I don't need your help. I just wanted these letters after my name. Basically, I have the best plot ever for a book. No one could fuck this up. Anyone can write this book, but it's mine and I'm not going to tell anyone what it is. And so then what happens is the professor and the student have a one-on-one individual meeting where they're talking about the program. And he tells him the plot of the novel, which we don't learn as the audience. We just learn it's this incredible plot. No one's ever written a book like this. It's so amazing. It's got this insane twist in it. And then you get to, I think part of the thing I liked about the book is that I thought she did a really good job of inserting pieces. You got to read 8 pages of this guy's book that he submitted as the writing sample to get into this program. And then later, what happens is this formerly one-time hit author steals the plot of the book, and then you get to read pieces of his book that he wrote, spaced out throughout the rest of the book. So I thought that was a very clever device that was used. But so you get to read the 8 pages of the student's writing. I literally figured out what the twist in the book was immediately, right away. It was this is not a big twist. This was really predictable. Immediately I knew what it was. And so then it was hard for me because it was am I supposed to have figured this out?
That's the worst thing about reading a mystery novel when you figure out the plot, because the whole time you're not even paying attention to the book because you're just telling yourself that you can't have figured it out already.
Yeah. And I was like, how did I figure this out? And so, but then what happens is the student dies.
Dun, dun, dun.
A month later after this program. And so there's this huge time jump where this professor is then working at a different job after this program shuts down. And he discovers that this kid has died many years before because he's like, man, this book was so good. I knew he was going to make it. I knew this piece of shit was going to get everything that he wanted. Why didn't this book ever come out? And then he discovers it's because he died. And so he steals the plot of the book. But that's part of the concept behind it is if he never wrote the book, is it really plagiarism to use the same plot? Because people use the same plots over and over again. Yeah. But the idea in this story is no one has ever written this plot before. And so it's identifiable that he's stolen this idea from this kid. And so he publishes this book. There's another big time jump. And he is super famous. It's become the Da Vinci Code, basically, is the only way I can think to describe it. He's on talk show circuits. He's giving big book tour lectures, shit like that. And he goes to this tour in Seattle, and he has to go on a shock jock radio show to promote the book. And the shock jock's assistant. Okay, I'm just gonna spoil this book, so if you don't want to know about this, skip ahead on this. She asks him out to dinner, and immediately I was like, oh, this is the woman that this book was stolen from. Immediately I figured it out immediately. And the twist in the book is that this woman murders her daughter and steals her life. And I immediately figured it out and was like, oh, wait, hold on a second. So then she moves to New York with him. They get married immediately. And so there's this like whole unraveling plot of someone is blackmailing him and sending him these letters of
but
like,
it's
I know
his wife.
Yeah, I know you're a thief. I know you did this. He's trying to hide it from her because he doesn't want her to know that he's sort of a plagiarist. But it was like, as it got closer and closer to the end, I was like, I'm enjoying this writing style and I like the like concept and the way this book is built. But is it really this easy? Was it really this easy to figure this out? And it fucking was. And those were the twists. And so by the time I got to the end, I was like, what the fuck? What the hell? So I felt so like disappointed, although there is like an additional twist at the end that I didn't necessarily see coming, but I enjoyed. And at the end I was like, okay, well, I like the way she at least wrapped this up. It was not what I was expecting. And so in that I was like, okay, I think I would still recommend this to people, but with the huge caveat that if you read a lot of books or have ever read any true crime at all, it's super easy to figure out what's going on, which is really disappointing. But I feel like maybe if it's a TV show, it would be less easy to figure out because they would do a better job of like spacing out all the foreshadowing. It was just such a strange experience to be like, okay, I'm enjoying this. I don't want to not finish it. But what the fuck? Why was this so easy to figure out? Because I know you are really good about figuring out twists, and I'm okay
it's
at
annoying.
it. But I was just like, it was like being hit in the face with a chair. It was like, this is the easiest twist I've ever seen. It was so bizarre. Like, it was so strange. And I was talking to Bobby about it, and he was like, that's what Stella must feel like when she reads books. I was like, it must be. It's awful.
It's the worst.
Yeah, it was weird. Like I said, I enjoyed reading it. I wouldn't say, and I told other people, like, if you want to read this, you should just be aware, like, if you're good at twists, you're going to figure it out. Like, literally 20 pages in, I figured out the twist, and it's like a 300-page book. So it was weird to be like, oh no.
I like that Bobby was like, oh, is this what Stella feels like?
Yeah.
And you have like this emotional empathy for me now.
Yeah. Like,
when I watch TV shows and read books, and I'm like, well, I know what happens. And I'm right like 80% of the time. It's a high number.
It was just like, oh man, what a bummer. Last book I read, really fucking good. You're going to talk about this one too. Finished the Final Girl Support Group.
I think I already talked about it.
Oh, that's right, because you finished it in a day.
Because I read it in a day. It was like, I read that ages ago.
Yes. Final Girl Support Group, Grady Hendrix. It was so fucking good. I think it's my favorite book of his. I really, really enjoyed it.
Talking about it with you and like thinking about it more, I think that it might be my favorite too.
It was just so good. And like, I thought the mystery in it was set up very well. And we talked about this. This is kind of like a light spoiler, so skip ahead like 30 seconds. There's a red herring in the book that if you're really familiar with horror movies, it really threw me off. I was like, oh, it must be this person because they've made this change from what's a very famous horror movie. Oh, it must be because they're foreshadowing that it's this other person, and it was not. And so it like really threw me when it wasn't. I was like, what the fuck is this?
And see, because I don't have a history of watching horror films, I didn't pick up on the red herring. Like, you can tell that it's like a red herring, but I was like, no way, I don't buy this. I knew who the killers were almost fucking as soon as they got introduced. I was like, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I did
but
not.
But it didn't ruin my enjoyment of it because it's such a character-driven, like, the story is not about the mystery, it's about the final girls. So, like,
right, exactly.
Like, who cares about the mystery? Like, that didn't bother me. So knowing it actually, like, lent me some more enjoyment because it was like, oh, how are they going to deal when they realize that X person is the bad guy?
Yeah, it was, I really liked it. And like by the time they got to the partial reveal, I then was so distracted that I was like, I had been thrown off by this red herring that when the second part of the reveal came, I was legit shocked. I had no fucking clue. It really blew me away. So I really fucking enjoyed it. And like, I like the way that it ended. I thought that was very clever. I thought that he did Grady Hendrix is so good about writing about female friendship.
Yeah,
like
it's insane.
All of his books ultimately feel, I haven't read Horror Store, so I don't know about that one.
I'm actually going to talk about it. I read it
Okay. But like My Best Friend's Exorcism, Southern Book Club, Final Girl Support Group are really ultimately stories about friendship and about women and girls who find ways to be friends.
Friendship,
even though they're
And how friendship is developed or broken through trauma.
Yeah, and how you make the decision to keep those networks and what that means and how it can have like massive impacts on your life. And like, it's just such great writing in that respect. And like, we talk about this every time we talk about Grady Hendrix. Like, he writes women at a level that I just like cannot comprehend how he's so good at writing women. It is so bizarre, but like so delightful. I just love it. And also like, most of his other books have really serious body horror in them. I thought this one was going to have really serious body horror, and I don't feel like it really did. There was, I mean, maybe it's because I read Best Friend's Exorcism, which has like some of the worst body horror I've ever
I think
fucking
this
read.
one has a lot more psychological horror. I mean, there is the like murder museum, which is pretty fucked up.
Yeah, it is pretty fucked up. That's true. This is like contextless free spoiler. I was really surprised in the murder museum she didn't have Lynette's antlers. Like, that felt like a real oversight, that she was just like, oh, well, we'll build this room together. And it's like, but there's so much you could already have. Like, that was the one thing that really stuck out to me. Like, that's weird. It was like a weird oversight in a way that I don't feel like a lot of his books have. And so there must have been a reason. There must have been a choice that was made not to include that. But part of why I liked this, too, is because Lynette, the main character who is the narrator, is unreliable, but mostly she just sucks. Like, she sucks a lot.
She thinks she's really clever and she's fucking stupid.
She's so stupid. There are so many things that happen where I'm like, how are you so bad at this? Like, truly fucking bad at this.
Because she's so scared. She's so scared that she thinks she's overprepared, but she's so scared that she's not noticing these, like, very obvious things in front of her.
Yeah, it was, which I thought was, again, really clever storytelling, but it was just like, as someone who's reading from the eyes of this narrator, it's like, how are you so fucking bad at this?
How are you so fucking stupid?
Yeah, but I overall, I really enjoyed it. It was really fucking good. I highly recommend it. It's also like a great spooky season read. Like, this is the right time of year to be reading something like this. If you've never watched horror movies, this is like, it's accessible even if you don't really know what the horror movies it's based on are. But if you've watched a lot of horror movies, there's so much great details inside of it. Like, I had a really good time figuring out, like, oh, this is this movie, this is supposed to be this movie. Yeah, that was
fun. Even me having not watched a lot of it, it was fun to, because they're like, obviously, like, even if you've never seen horror, you know who Freddy Krueger is, and you know who Jason is, and you know, like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So it was cool to be like, oh, this person belongs to this franchise, this person belongs to that franchise. Like, it was, that was really cool.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. And like,
I think it's going to make such an interesting TV show, because it's already been optioned as a TV show. Like, I can just imagine, like, each Final Girl kind of gets their own episode, and like, I think it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. And like we were saying about Certain Hunger, like, it's just very meticulous writing. And I just appreciate that so much as someone who reads a shitload, like someone who puts a lot of time and care into the plot and characters. You can just tell. And so I really enjoyed it. It was really fucking good. That's it. That's all I read. Tell me your long list.
I'm going to fly through it because some of them are like part of series. So the first book that I read was Thud, which is a Discworld book. As you know, I'm trying to read all of the City Watch books. This is the second to last one, so I only have one more left, which feels like really like bittersweet. I'm almost done.
Aww.
This is good because City Watch books are good. It's not the best one. It's not incredible. It's pretty formulaic, but it's fun. It has to do with an ancient mystery or prophecy between the trolls and the dwarves, and it's great. And Sam Vimes is great. And he has a baby now, and he always makes it home by 6 p.m. to read to his son, no matter what happens. And it's a lot of him being like, oh, I have to leave right now. And he'll like run across the city to read is this my cow, or like, where's my cow to his son. And it's so sweet. It's really sweet, but it's also framed in like a really comedic way. And then it comes to a head near the end, and it's really funny. If you like City Watch books, they're the best. I don't know. I love them. I read this 2-part graphic novel called Extremity by Daniel Warren Johnson. It's actually a friend. I was playing D&D, or not D&D. I was playing like an RPG at his house right before the pandemic. And I was like, what's that? And he was like, oh, just borrow it. And so I borrowed it, and I was going to go play the RPG at his house. And I was like, oh, I should probably read these and return them. So I read them. I showed up at his house, handed him his books, and he goes, oh, I A, forgot you had this, and B, nobody ever returns books. And I was like, I'm a rare unicorn in that I will return your book after I read it. It's really good. It's a 2-part series, so it's just volume 1, volume 2. One is called The Artist, the one is called The Warrior, and it's basically, it's like a high fantasy world, sci-fi world where these 2 factions have been at war for forever, and you get to see what that war is like from 2 young women from each side, and how they like come together and like what happens, and it's left really open-ended. The art is really beautiful. It's a good story about like the perspective of war and like fighting for a legacy or being embroiled in like a forever war that you don't really like. It's all you ever know, but you don't really know why you're fighting.
Prescient.
Yes, it's very good. I read TekLords by William Shatner. The second of the Tech War books.
How many books are in the Tech War series?
Like 11. There's so many. It is terrible. And I had a delightful time reading it. I'm not going to give any plot away because there's not really plot. I don't know. That's this dude trying to find tech drugs, and there's exploding robots, and like it's truly a nightmare. It's a mess. I think
he actually writes those, right?
These ones may have been ghostwritten. These ones were written like a long time ago. Like I think the first one came out in 1989, which is when I was born. So like they're awful. I told Erin and Bobby, I was like, I think part of the reason I genuinely enjoy reading this is that it's such a mess that I don't know what's going on at any point. Like I can follow along for the most part, but like chapters just like fucking end, and you're like, okay. And then there's like time jumps and space jumps, and you're like, I have, who is this character? I don't know. And I think part of the reason I have a good time is because I have no idea what's going on. And I have to be really present while reading it. So, and also I just like weirdly love William Shatner. He's my problematic fave. Leave me alone. So yeah, TekLords, do not recommend, but I have a delightful time reading them. And I have them all. Thank you. Wow. Thank you, eBay. Because they're obviously not still published.
No.
The other day I was like, man, I really want to listen to like a werewolf book. I'm like feeling real werewolfy. I just need to find a werewolf book. So I Googled like best werewolf audiobooks, and I found this article with the best opening line I've ever read in the history of the internet. It just said, "Are you tired of reading books about humans? Have you considered werewolves?" I want a t-shirt and a mug and a notebook that says, "Have you considered werewolves?" Brilliant. So I found this book from that. It's called The Last Werewolf by Glen Duncan. And I was like, okay, whatever. That seems really over the plate. This book was genuinely really good. It was super good. It's really graphic. It's really graphic. Like, it should have like a E like rating. There is a lot of sex. There is a lot of very violent werewolf murder. But it's really good. It's told first person narrator from the perspective of the last werewolf. And he is being hunted down, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna die and I'll be the last one. I guess. Whatever. He's lived for a long time, so he's like, okay, sure, fine. But then he comes across another werewolf, and it's like an elusive female werewolf. Ooh. So then they just go to town on each other. And he gets like a new reason to live. And then they have to kind of solve this mystery, but he's also like, he's like Lynette in Final Girl Support Group, where he has like a ton of money, a ton of plans. Like he thinks he's really smart, but he has no fucking idea what's going on. And in every new chapter, he is introduced to like another subplot in like this supernatural world that he's like, oh, I really thought I was on top of shit, but I don't know anything. So it's really interesting. And then there is the way that it ends was really shocking in like a delightful way. And I don't want to give anything away if you want to read this. I was really delighted by how it ended. And yeah, it was really good. It's there are vampires, but not really. I love in this book that vampires exist, but they don't have sex at all. And part of the reason that they can't have sex, because there's no blood flow, I guess. I feel like it's the only universe when they've acknowledged that like there's no blood flow, so your genitals don't work.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because usually, like, I mean, vampirism is like an allegory for rape. Like it is a very sexual, whatever, supernatural story. And for this one just to be like, werewolves fuck all the time. Like, we have to fuck. Like, this dude has like, he has a bunch of prostitutes that he like pays and takes care of because he's like, I have to fuck all the time. Like, it's part of my weird animal DNA. And the vampires literally can't fuck, so they're like really jealous of the werewolves. It's really good. I don't know. I just was like, sure, I want a werewolf book. And then I was like, oh, this is actually really clever and subverts a lot of, or not even subverts, just like takes really obvious things from like a werewolf or a vampire mythology and just is like, what if we just dumbed it down? Like, werewolves are dumb animals that like, he says he has like a mantra all the time where he says like, eat, kill, fuck. Like, that's what I exist to do. And vampires are like snooty, sexless, like monsters. It's great. I highly recommend it if you like supernatural shit. I listened to an X-Files audiobook, and it was one of the worst audiobooks I've ever listened to in my life. It was called The X-Files Whirlwind. It's X-Files #2. It was awful. It was, not only did it like make Native Americans the bad guys, for no reason, and use the like native mythos as like, oh, they control the wind or whatever. But it truly could have been just a detective story. Like, it didn't feel like Mulder or Scully at all. It was awful. Do not recommend. Do not listen to it if you like the X-Files.
Yeah, I told you gotta listen to the cold case ones that have the actual full cast.
Well,
those are the only ones I recommend. No, that
free.
You get what you pay for.
Yeah, well, it was bad. Don't listen to it.
Yeah, that's why I don't listen to those. You only listen to the full cast ones because Gillian Anderson only signs on to stuff that's actually good.
Yeah, she has excellent taste in literally everything, I think.
Yep, I think you're right.
Yeah, literally everything. I listened to Darkly Dreaming Dexter because for some reason me and Nick have decided to watch Dexter, which is one of the worst TV shows I've ever seen in my life, but I'm going to continue to watch it out of like a morbid curiosity. Like, I don't have a bad time watching it, but the whole time I'm like, this is not good. Why were people obsessed with this? This is a show with the worst written women that I've ever seen, and I watch professional wrestling and Supernatural on a weekly basis. Like, my bar is fucking low. And
it's on the floor as far as it can go.
This one is like subterranean. Like, it is bad. And
it's bad.
It was curious, so I was like, okay, I'll listen to the first book. The narrator is really good. It's actually narrated by the author, and he does an excellent job. I'm not going to read any more of them because I don't need to. I was just curious. The women are both written better and worse in this book. It's very odd.
Fantastic.
It's very odd. Like, I think Deb is written better in the book, but LaGuerta is written worse in the book. Whatever. Interesting experiment, I guess.
You tried. Yeah. That's what matters is you tried.
Continue watching the show. I'm currently in the Jimmy Smith season, and I feel like I've already figured everything out. I'm like, I'm just along for the ride.
Yeah, I liked season 4 for the most part, but then stopped watching after season 4.
Well, everybody tells me to stop watching after season 4, and I'm like, you're just making me want to watch the rest of it.
I can't wait to see how much you just despise the rest of the series.
Yeah, well, I already hate Dexter. Before I started watching it, I hated Dexter with like a deep passion because they got renewed for a new season, and Hannibal, A Perfect Show, has not been renewed. So I'm just a little pissed about that.
Hannibal's gonna be like Deadwood. It's gonna come back in like 10 years. Like, it's got,
and everybody will be like extra daddy, and like it'll be great.
Exactly.
I mean, it's almost been 10 years.
Oh my God, you're right. That's wild.
Buckle up, come on.
Right around the corner.
Pray to the altar of Brian Fuller. I did read listen to Horror Store by Grady Hendrix, which was I think it was his first novel. It's a horror book set in an IKEA-esque shop.
I fucking knew it. I didn't know anything about it except the way the title was spelled. And I was like, this has got to be an IKEA book.
It is also free on Audible. So if you have Audible, an Audible subscription, you can listen to it. It is, I feel like you can tell that it's his first like novel because it is a way more over the plate horror story.
Okay.
It's like this IKEA was built on like a former sanitary or like a former like insane asylum prison and, you know, ghosts and shit. And it follows this one girl. And it's more about her relationships with the other employees. And so it is still about like friendship and stuff, or like coming together in the times of like, you know, literal horror and trauma. But it has less to do about friendship and more to do about capitalism is bad.
Oh, I mean, I'm into that.
Yeah, it's good. It's not as good as his other stuff, but it is like worth a read if you like Grady Hendrix. It is just a more standard horror, I think. But the main character is a girl. Her name's Amy, I think. And she's a good final girl, I guess. So you can kind of see the beginnings of Grady Hendrix.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like when you read his other stuff, you can see like, oh, this like there are seeds in my best friend's exorcism that definitely led to Southern Book Club, and like the way that those female friendships are treated within that clearly are part of what leads to the way that he treats the group of women in Final Girl. It's like I like that he's a writer who grows. It's nice.
Yeah. But his first stuff is new, or his old stuff is still very readable, and it's like, you know, it's a good allegory of like, these people were in prison and they were like working and also like were trapped, and how these people are working in their dead end IKEA jobs and are trapped, and you know, it's very obvious but still enjoyable to read. I finished this morning, actually. I really flew through this one. It's called Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. If you are a romance novel person, Sally Thorne is the woman who wrote The Hating Game, which was like a really big romance novel in like 2016. I think it's being made into a movie. I read The Hating Game and I liked it. Hating Game is it's both an enemies to lovers and a fake dating. So it's a double whammy. But I didn't really like either of the characters in that one. Like, it was a good story and it was well written and I'm glad I read it and I'm going to see the movie, but both the main characters are kind of like tools, and so I was like, I don't really care about you guys. This one is really good. It takes place in a like retirement village where one of the girl in the story is like the manager of this retirement village, and there are these two older women who essentially they're really rich. They like ran a fashion magazine or something, and they now in their old retirement age like to hire young men as their assistants to like psychologically torture them and see how long they can last as their assistant. Like, they have all these games and stuff that they play and they have like names for them and stuff. And so this dude comes to the retirement home, and he's like the son of the owner or whatever, and that he's like, my son's a deadbeat, he needs a job, essentially. And so she's like, well, I got a job. You can be these two crazy old ladies' assistant. And he's got like tattoos and is like a bad boy, but he's one of those people where like everybody judges him and thinks he's a fuck up without actually like getting to know him or like listen to him. He's got like hidden depths and whatever. It's very over the plate, but it is every person in the book is just written really well, and everybody's really likable. And even the like, you know, because every romance novel has some kind of fucking mystery in it, because it's like, I have a repressed secret or whatever. So like even the like little twists or whatever are cute, and the characters are really good, and I just had a delightful time reading it. And in the retirement village there are like these like turtles that are endangered, and everybody's trying to save these fucking turtles the whole time. It's so cute. It's really cute. I liked it a lot. I think it's better than The Hating Game. I think it came out this year or maybe last year, but if you like romance novels, highly recommend second first impressions. And then I read one more, but I'm going to transition. That's my transition noise. Into the raves because I want to talk about this book that everybody already knows is good, and I am a decade too late and a movie too late. But this book is so good. The Martian by Andy Weir is so fucking good.
It's so good.
Also free on Audible right now if you have an Audible subscription. I think it's going away in like a week though, so you better download it now.
Get it now.
It's so fucking good. First of all, it makes the science so accessible. And when I was texting you, I was like, you have had to have read this book, right? This is like an Erin book, right?
Yes,
this is
very much so.
Capital E Erin book. And I was like, is this science real? And you were like, yeah, actually it was written like as a blog for a long time. And he consulted a lot of like real life scientists and stuff. And so a lot of it is real or like theoretically real. Cause like obviously we don't colonize Mars or whatever.
Not yet.
Not yet. But I loved how accessible the writing was. I liked how it was written in like epistolary form, but then it would jump to like what's happening at NASA headquarters and what's happening on the other ship. And I thought the characters were so well defined. And I thought Mark Watney was just like a delight. Like this fucking man stuck on Mars. He's like, I'm probably going to die, but also I still have a sense of humor. And like, fuck yeah, I grew potatoes from my poop. This man, I just loved him so much. And the audiobook is narrated by Will Wheaton, which is just chef kiss, perfect like audio casting. He does an excellent job. It was such a fucking delight. I loved it so much. I want everybody who even has like an inkling in like science, liking science or NASA or like science fiction, like it's such a good melding of science fiction because we obviously don't colonize Mars yet, and real world science, and like also makes you both happy and sad about like NASA's situation because you're like, yay, NASA exists, but we could be doing so much more. NASA's cool. Yes. Space is cool. And like also like in this time of terror and pandemic and global warming and like everybody's out for themselves, like it was nice to read a story where the whole world, even like mortal enemies like the United States and China, come together to save this one man. And it has that very like Star Trek feeling of like the good of the one outweighs the good of the many sometimes, and like how good that was. And but to transition to a mini rant, the whole time I was reading it, I was like, Matt Damon?
I know.
We're doing Matt Damon? We did Matt Damon? That's terrible casting. That's the most boring, bland casting. First of all, this weird botanist should be like a dork, not fucking a Hollywood like quote unquote heartthrob. I don't think Matt Damon's attractive, but whatever.
Well, I think that's part of why, like, just to get this out there, I fucking hate Matt Damon. He's like my personal nemesis. I hate his face. I understand and recognize that he's a genuinely good actor in lots of things. I just cannot handle him. I really, really dislike him. And when Michael and I first started dating, we book clubbed this book together and then went and saw this movie as soon as it came out. And he was like, uh-oh, you hate Matt Damon. This is going to be bad. And I still enjoyed the movie, even though it's a lot of Matt Damon's face, because I think they did a good job of letting him be funny. And they didn't treat him as like a heartthrob. And it was like, oh, I am a person who's just trying to survive out here. And the rest of the casting is so good.
The rest of the casting is so good, because I looked it up and I was like, I think Donald Glover cast as Rich Parnell is like chef kiss fucking casting. Like
he's so good.
Sebastian Stan is the cutie. I want to see this cutie booty in space. Like I'm excited. I'm gonna watch it. But the whole time I was like, Matt Damon? This is what we did?
Yeah. And I told you the worst part about it is that at the end, when he's supposed to be very thin and has lost a lot of weight, they just CGI'd his totally normal head onto a very thin body. And it's just the weirdest fucking thing in the world. Like, you couldn't even CGI his face to be it's literally just his weird round Matt Damon head on like a very skinny body. It's so stupid.
Honestly, CGI has ruined movies.
It has. You're right.
I'd rather watch a fucking spaceship like on a string than watch CGI, which is probably why my favorite TV show is from the 60s. Yeah. Anyways, I thought it was a delight and I loved it so much. So I'm glad that I'm late to the party, but I'm glad I watched it. TBD when I come back and talk about the movie.
Yeah.
So that was.
I'm glad that you liked it.
That was an hour of book talk.
Yes. And a rave and a mini rave.
And a rave. What's your rave?
My rave is that we went and saw a movie in the theaters that came out before we were both born.
Yeah,
Star
whales.
Trek 4, the one with the whales.
Also known as Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, the actual
Yes.
title.
Sure, the one with the whales. Everyone kept saying, oh, the one with the whales. And I thought it was just like, oh, there are whales in it. I did not understand that it's about whales.
It's
just
Save the Whales propaganda.
It is just straight up whale propaganda. Like, the whole movie is literally whale propaganda, which I loved. I found fucking delightful.
Hey, whale propaganda from the late 80s, early 90s fucking worked.
It sure did. It sure fucking did. It was just so good. And like, I had no context for this. I've only seen, at this point as of this recording, like 26 episodes of the original Star Trek, and like,
you've seen
Generations,
First Contact, and
I
Star
don't
Trek.
remember anything about First Contact though, except that the stepdad from 6 Feet Under is in it. That's it. I don't remember anything else.
Oh yeah, that's a funny poll. And you've seen Star Trek 2009.
Yes.
Which obviously has no context in anything.
Yes. And I've seen Star Trek Into Darkness, but barely remember it because I saw it when I had no context for Star Trek at all, which is good that I've forgotten
for the day that you want to burn a building down after you see that movie.
I mean, I felt already that way after watching the 2009 one.
Just imagine that doubled.
Yeah. Now that I know who Khan is too, and I know what they do in Into Darkness, I have a better idea of how much I'm gonna dislike it.
Yeah. But anyways, I cut you off. So you went into all I told you about this. I was like, what you need to know is Spock died. Spock is alive again, and he has a wonkadonk memory.
And that was it. I didn't know anything else.
Oh, and then halfway through, I leaned over and I was like, oh, also Bones and Spock shared a brain for like a whole movie. That is also pretty important.
Yeah,
and he just looked at me like, excuse me?
That was very important information for me, a Bones shipper, to have known going in. It was very helpful, though, that the theater played what was essentially a DVD extra right before the movie started about, like, the making of the movie. And, like, it gave, like, a more comprehensive plot summary so that I kind of had a better idea of what I was going into. But still, I didn't really know, like, anything. It was like, okay, I basically have an expanded version of Spock died, Spock came back. Now they're facing the consequences of everything that happened from
Blowing up a planet.
Blowing up a planet, right. I fucking loved it. I love them,
man.
I love them as old people. Like, having seen Generations too, like, for just as a plug for the other podcast that I'm a part of, Time to Party, our September movie series, which comes out every Monday of September, is Generations, and Stella is our guest on that. Hey. So you can listen to us talk about Generations.
They wanted to do the one with the whales, and I was like, no, you cannot watch, because they watch the movies apart and then talk about it. I was like, Erin has to be sitting next to me when we watch the one with the whales. I'm sorry, you cannot. I veto this. I'm using my veto powers.
Yep. So we watched Generations instead. So having watched them as older people already, some of them, like Chekhov especially, who after watching Generations, I was like, oh, this is why people like Chekhov, because he's
great in the movies.
Because he's not treated as like a weird teenage heartthrob, which is completely unbelievable in TOS. And so, like, I've never been able to connect with that. I don't particularly care for Chekhov in TOS, but I like him in the movies. And so it was nice to already have that context of like, oh, I like them as old people. And so it was nice to get the whole crew as old people.
Married Spurk is one of my favorite tags.
I love it. I thought it was so fun. I thought it was clever in lots of ways. I love the double dumbass. That's so
double
silly.
Dumbass on you. This has been Swearing with Captain James C. Kirk.
I love that the love story isn't really a love story. Like, it's kind of a love story.
At the
but
end,
it's
she's
not
like,
really.
I'm in the future and there are whales here, so bye.
Yeah, I loved it.
He gets totally shut down by the whale scientist.
I love too that she just like abandons her life. She's like, I don't have friends. I don't have family. I don't care about my apartment. Fuck this. I'm out. Like,
I only care about the whales.
All I care about is the whales, and they were taken from me, and I will take them back, and I will go to the future with them. Like, I loved it. I just thought it was so clever. And it was funny too when they started playing, because obviously the whole movie is predicated on this like weird whale probe that comes in and just starts like fucking things up. Like, as soon as they started playing it, I was like, oh, even just knowing that there are whales in the movie and not knowing it was about whales, literal whale propaganda, I knew right away, like, oh, it's a whale song. Like, it's like haunting and beautiful in a way. And so I really liked the way that they used whale song inside of it as like an audio choice. I just thought it was very clever.
Uhura too, because they make her really competent in that. And they're like, okay, put it underwater, do all this frequency stuff, and you see her make all these calculations. Like,
yep,
I love a competent Uhura, man.
I love a competent Uhura. I just thought it was so good. I loved seeing them in the weird warbird,
the Klingon warbird.
Yeah, like, it's interesting to see them inside of a different ship and still working as, like, a very competent crew. Like, I love that. I love the scene with Scotty and Bones where they go to the fucking, like, textile factory and are like,
hello, computer.
Should we not do this? He's like, we don't know that he didn't invent this. Like, I just love it. I saw, too, it was funny, right before we went to see the movie, there's that account, Deep Space Fine, that you recommended to me.
Yeah.
She's very funny and very clever. And she was talking that day about one of her favorite things about the movie is that normally in science fiction, when people time travel, someone is an expert on the era that they go to. Like, someone just happens to know everything about...
I love Old West Americana, so I just know everything about it. Lucky we time traveled randomly to this point in history.
How lucky for me. And I love that they go back and they're like, what are the 80s? What does any of this mean?
What does exact change mean?
Yeah, like, what is currency? Is
$100 a lot? Is that a lot?
And he's like, here it is. Don't spend all of it at once. Like, I love that.
Like his children.
Yes, I just thought it was so clever. I love how he tells them to disperse and they all just like spin in a circle and are like, what are we supposed to do?
Everyone is the smartest dumbass they've ever met. Yes. It's the best.
I just loved it. I thought it was so clever. And like, as someone who's like really learning to love Star Trek, it was like, I love that this just went on for what feels like generations. Like, it just goes on for... Yeah, like it's been on for decades. Like, it was on its original run, and then the movies go on for decades. And I just love that. I think it's so... I love that everyone who was a part of the show loves it. I love that people wanted to continue coming back. I love that people feel this connection to it still. Like, even though it's probably very overwhelming to have been part of that original run and to like still have that be such a defining part of your life and your personality in lots of ways and how people view you. I love that people seem to just embrace it, and it was so delightful. And like, I'll get into this very shortly in my rant, but like, I can't really sit through a movie anymore. I don't have the like time capacity to do that, and I sat through this entire movie. And,
you didn't go to the bathroom once. I went to the bathroom.
I know, not one single time, because I was just like so enthralled. I was so delighted. I didn't want to miss anything. I just had I'm so glad we saw it in a theater. Like, it was such a great movie to see in a theater too. I love that the weird back and forth with the whales was so long.
They just talk for like, that is a trope in Star Trek movies where there's like a really long scene that like would not be in a scene now. Like when you watch the motion picture, everybody jokes about it, that the like opening when they see the Enterprise for the first time or whatever, because it's getting refitted, it's like 20 it feels like 20 minutes. It's probably like 8, but it feels like 20 fucking minutes, and you're like, we get it, it's the ship, fucking come on.
I mean, it makes sense too that like that show had been canceled for such a long time, and to have those movies come back like decades later and be like, it's the ship. Like, I get it.
I love that there are 2 more TOS movies after this, because one of my favorite things about the movies and TOS in general is that you do get to see them age, and you get to see them grapple with that. Not only with their like a big thing in Wrath of Khan is like, am I too old for this? Like, are they going to kick me out? Like, you get to see them grapple with their careers and getting older together. And I mean, I joke all the time that Star Trek V is my favorite movie, but there are parts of that I love because of that. Like, you see Scotty and Uhura start to realize that they like each other more than, you know, coworkers, and they've worked together for decades, and now they have this like old people romance. And I know some people say that this is a bad part of the movie, but I like that Uhura as like a woman in her 50s is used as like a sexual distraction, and it's not a joke. She's like, no, I'm still fucking hot. I'm just old and hot, and it works. And I love that. I love seeing them old.
Yeah, I love it. And like, that's a personal soft spot for me. I love old people movies. I love movies where people are old and have like friendship. I love old people falling in love. Like, I've always really liked that. It's just like a weird part of my own personality. But like, so it felt especially good for me to be like, here's like two intersections of something that I've always loved and something I'm growing to love. And like, I'm so glad they come together in this way.
Also,
so I just find it fucking delightful. And whales. And like, now I understand what people mean when they say the one with the whales.
It's really about whales.
Yeah, I don't understand why people say the one with the whales. It's the one about whales. It is about fucking whales.
The one solely focused on whales.
Yeah, the one that's literally up and down completely about whales.
Okay, what's your rant?
Well, I haven't announced this on the podcast yet, but if you follow me on Twitter, you already know this. I'm pregnant. Woo! Hooray! Being pregnant sucks. It's not. It's not super fun. This is something my husband and I had been planning. We had been talking about this for a really long time. We're both in our 30s. This is like, now is the time. We've been married for several years now. We've been together for almost a decade. I never thought I wanted to be a mom. It took me a really long time to come around on the fact that I wanted to be a parent. And so this has been like a very strange journey for me. It took a lot of therapy. It took several therapists actually to get to this point. But it is rough. It is hard to be pregnant. It is an experience I would not suggest to you unless you actually want to be a parent. Like, it is amazing to me how many people become pregnant and don't mean to, and then are like resentful of it. And I see why now, because it is really hard to be pregnant, especially as someone who's a enormous stoner and has not smoked weed in several months. It is rough. I'm really glad I took a whole year off from drinking, so I was at least prepared for that. But like, it's, as somebody who has had a really serious eating disorder for a long time, it's also very difficult to be pregnant. There is no literature that is helpful. It's just a bunch of shit that's like, if you have an eating disorder, you should never get pregnant. It's like, cool, that's not helpful in any way, shape, or form.
And
Thanks
really
a lot.
shitty, so fuck those people.
Yeah.
When you told me that, I got so mad. I mean, we don't have to talk about that, but fuck those people.
Yeah, it's just like, well, this is not helpful in any way, shape, or form. And like...
And discriminatory.
Yeah, and it's like, a lot of it is like, you should be fully recovered before you get pregnant. It's like, cool, that's not how eating disorders work. They're not linear in that way. Yeah. Like, I'll always have an eating disorder. It's part of the chemical function of my brain. Like, that's just how it is. And like, my husband's been great. He's like very enthusiastically supportive of like, you're doing a really good job. He was like, I thought it was going to be a lot more difficult having to like coax you to eat a lot, but you're doing a really good job at this. And part of it is I have no fucking choice. Like,
you're hungry.
There's a parasite growing inside of me that's like, bitch, you're going to eat. You don't have any choice. And like, the hardest thing for me is that I don't really have an appetite a lot of time. And that's something that I conquered with weed for a really long time. And so having to like come to terms with, how do I just force myself to eat is just a thing that I've had to learn how to do. I'm in my second trimester now, so I'm pretty far in, and like, I just gotta do it. It's just something I have to do. I'm trying to get through it, but like, I'm also at this point where like, modern medicine is a fucking miracle. I had some scares there. I'm comfortable talking about it now because I've had some very good news and things are in like a really good place now. But like, we had some scary ultrasound results that like, I had to go talk to genetic counselors and I had to have a lot of tests done and it sucked and it was really hard. And I truly cannot imagine having done that if I didn't really want to be a parent. And so it was also nice to have that reaffirming like, oh, I really do want this. And so now if it's not happening, I'm going to be really fucking sad and upset about it. And so it's been, my team of doctors is incredible. And I have a lot of medical trauma because I've had a lot of really shitty doctors. And so it was really nice to be like, oh, some people love their jobs and some people go into medicine for the right reasons. And it's been really heartening to deal with, especially genetic counselors who probably deal with just the worst shit in people's lives every day, who were just incredible. I'm like, I'm done meeting with my genetic counselors now. We've gotten all the results that were good, and so we're again in a really good place. But we told the counselors that we met with in our final meetings, like, you guys made this so much easier. This could have been so fucking hard, and like, you guys really made this an experience that wasn't like fucking hell for an entire month. And all of them were like, thank you so much for saying that. That's really nice, and I really needed to hear that. And it's like, yeah, I bet you just get people who are angry a lot because you're just giving them really bad news. And so it's weird. It's like, I'm uncomfortable all the time. I have to pee every fucking 5 minutes. Like, I'm starving all the time. I'm very noticeably pregnant now, and so none of my fucking clothes fit me anymore. And so I'm in this like weird place where I feel both very grateful that I'm like surrounded by this medical team that is really pushing me forward, and I have a really great partner. But I'm also just like, man, what a fucking nightmare it is to be pregnant. And like every day we get closer, like my sisters keep sending me stuff about like, here's what it's like to give birth. And I'm like, stop telling me this. Like, we have a very good friend, Pizzazz, who gave birth a couple of months ago, who like had a pretty traumatic experience. And like, but that's how everyone tells their birth stories. They're like, I had this beautiful plan where I was gonna hypno breathe my way through it, and then it's like, just kidding, medicine came for my ass. And so at this point I'm just like, get it out of me alive. I don't even care. Like, I had a lot of like pie in the sky ideas about like, I'm not gonna want drugs, I'm gonna want to do this naturally. And then I had this like come to Jesus moment where I was like, I take acid and mushrooms all the time. Why would I not use drugs? Like, this is the dumbest thing ever. Like, I want to be as not uncomfortable as I humanly can while a human rips its way out of me. Like, that's what it is, though. You're like, yeah, pushing a watermelon out a keyhole.
Girl, I know. I'm trying to get a dog so my husband doesn't ask for a baby, okay? All my friends are pregnant. I'm like, do you want a dog?
Yeah. So it has been a journey. I'm due in February, so I still have some time left. Although it feels like it's fucking flying by, which is weird. Also, fun thing I've learned, pregnancy brain fog, it's real. I feel like my brain melts out of well, it's weird because like I've never experienced anything like that before. And so that like brain fog of I just don't remember shit, and like I make mistakes at work where I'm like, that was dumb. Why did I do like I had to work this morning and I just copied the wrong response from a page and sent it to the wrong client and was like, whoops, sorry. Didn't notice it for like 2 hours and was like, my bad, I fucked this up. Like, it has been weird, but it's nice because like all my coworkers know I'm pregnant, and so they've all been like, yeah, we get it, you're pregnant, you're fucking stuff up, it's fine. So that's my rant, is that my body is betraying me. And I'm happy about it, but also like, man, this is hard. This is not a thing that I think I want to do a bunch of times. So we'll see going forward if there's another one, but for now, just the one. So that's my rant. What's your rant?
Well, Becky Lynch came back at SummerSlam, which was really cool and really exciting, and her hair looked great. And then she beat Bianca for the SmackDown Championship in it was 26 seconds. And that is disgusting. It makes me so fucking mad. Not only because like we should really be past this shit, like for the men and the women, it's embarrassing, it's sloppy writing, it's not good, but it ruined her return. It ruined her return for me. I was so excited to see her. I know a lot of people were, but we just spent the past fucking year building up Bianca. She had that incredible moment at WrestleMania. They like literally won awards about it. She is one of the strongest, LOL, but she is one of the strongest competitors that they have. And they have built her to be a physical menace in like many ways. And to have Becky Lynch come and just beat her for no reason, like, and that makes Becky look bad too. Like, I literally had a dream that night where I had cornered Becky and I was like, Becky, you have a lot of pull in this company. I'm really disappointed that you let this happen. Like, that was my actual dream. And like, I guess they can frame it in a way that's like, well, Bianca was surprised, but like, fuck that. She's a like she is somebody who has been competing in a sport or in any type of sport her literal entire life. It's literally like what she got recruited to WWE for. A surprise is not going to throw her. That doesn't track with her real life personality or her in-ring personality. That was stupid. That was unearned. It was sloppy. It ruined Becky Lynch's return. The follow-up on SmackDown last night was not particularly inspiring. There's rumors that they're trying to turn Becky heel. That's fucking stupid too. It's just like a classic case of WWE just shooting them their own selves in the foot because they're fucking stupid. And especially in the same week where CM Punk returns and has this like truly perfect moment and has like you know, there was this tweet going around, and I don't remember who did it, so I'm sorry. It's retweeted on my timeline, though, so somebody could find it, where they were like, it's truly incredible. Like, AEW is successful in many ways because they just give the fans what they want, and they don't try and act like they're smarter than them or do, like, twists or whatever. And AEW has many faults, too. Like, WWE does a better job with their women. Like, they just do. They have a history of being really bad at it, like, but they... Right now,
this is a great example of that.
This is a great example of their like bullshit. But just to have in the same weekend, less than 72 hours apart, have this like triumphant return and then have another potential awesome return that just immediately gets undercut by like sloppy writing or whatever, like that sucked. It just ruined. I mean, SummerSlam was a truly abysmal pay-per-view. It was really bad. But that was just like a cherry on top of like shittiness, and it sucked. And I'm excited Becky's back, and her hair, again, shout out to her hair, because, like, my kingdom for Becky Lynch's hair right now, it looks really good. But, like, that sucked. And the writers are dumb, and I hate WWE. And it's cool that CM Punk is back.
Yeah, we said we were going to talk about CM Punk, and then we just, like, didn't for, like, an hour.
I'm not pregnant, and I have to pee, so I imagine you have to pee. So I'm ready. Let's wrap it up. Let's do one question from the stag, and then let's go pee.
Fantastic, let's do it. Do. Pulling a stack out of the questions. Nope, that's the wrong way to say that. Whatever.
Okay, this better be delightful.
How much sawdust can you put into a Rice Krispie treat before people start to...
We have answered this question That's 1,000 times.
We've answered these questions in interviews that don't exist anymore.
We've also answered them on this podcast. Please burn the Rice Krispie sawdust. Please burn that one. I don't know, a cup. I don't know how to bake.
That's true. You don't know how to bake. That's a bad question for you.
Marshmallows
it just makes me
covers
laugh.
everything.
That's true.
You could probably make Rice Krispies with just sawdust and marshmallow, and it would probably have the same effect.
That was one we asked in the interview that doesn't exist anymore. That's not a great question. Putting that one back. If you could bankrupt any person, company, or country,
J.J.
or
Abrams.
organization.
Enemy number one.
I don't have a better answer for that, so we'll just end on that.
Enemy number one.
I love that tweet that you made of the Always Sunny guys pointing at the photo, and it's J.J. Abrams. I'm just sick of this guy.
I'm sick of this guy.
That's you.
It's my default mood. How are you? I don't know. I'm fine. Still hate J.J. Abrams.
Sick of that guy.
All right. You can find us on the internet. I'm at Stellar_Cheeks on Twitter.
I'm at NYD Urgency on Instagram.
You can follow our production company on Twitter at NYD Productions. And then you can use the hashtag #NotYourDemoPod to interact with us. Also, just a reminder, Extrex drops on Friday, season 2.
Yay!
The first episode is a horny banger.
You know, Extrex style.
Extrex style. And if you want to know what episodes we'll be doing, we'll be releasing it on the main Twitter feed on Wednesday, but we'll be releasing it early on our Patreon on Monday, and our Patreon's at patreon.com/NYD Productions.
And also related more to what this podcast used to be about, we also have a new Every Mania Ever coming out soon-ish. I don't know.
Probably also Monday.
Okay, probably also Monday, where we watched WrestleMania 19. We don't have super high opinions about it, but we did talk extensively about the Miller Lite catfight girls.
Yeah, we have maybe some shocking opinions. So tune
yeah,
in.
I think people may be very surprised by the way that we landed on that.
Yeah, we have a very nuanced conversation about femininity and feminism through the lens of the catfight girls. And you can get all this content. We restructured our Patreon. You can get all of the content, our backlogs, our future stuff for only $1. Like, we don't have tiers anymore. You can give more if you want to give more because podcasting isn't shockingly free. But if you want to and are only able to give $1, you can get all of our content for $1 because we're just trying to make a place where people can have fun together.
We also just want more people to listen to our Mish Pledgy Standcast unofficial channels.
Yeah, that's the real reason. We want more people to listen to us thirst over daddy.
Which will not be coming for several episodes of Extremity. So,
Yeah,
unofficial channels is where it's at.
It's a pledgy desert out there, and it's not fun. I miss him. Anyways, that's it. That's the podcast. We hope you had a good time. I don't know. How do we mark out?
And fuck off.
That's how we do it. Oh, I got a piece of that.
Bye.